You know, something you should be aware of is the fact that most synthesizers, specifically synthesizers, MIDI synthesizers, power up in what's called omni mode, which means they'll accept any MIDI channel at all. What I usually do is I have my synthesizers in poly mode, which is I tell them to accept just a specific channel. Because sometimes when you're using sequencers or keyboards, you have the same MIDI signal going to many different synthesizers, but if they're in poly mode and if they're only set to receive one certain channel, that's the only one they'll receive. They'll ignore the other ones. And then what I do is I go around and I set my different synthesizers on whichever channel I want them to pay attention to. The reason I mention this is that in this discussion of MIDI routing and all this, I think it's important that we make sure, if we're not in omni mode, that we're on the same MIDI channel so these things work. I'm going to give you another quick demonstration of routing here, and that's having the keyboard, our KX88, actually play our drum machine. Let's route that, shall we? And hopefully, yes, we do have our source, KX88, controlling our destination, which is the drum machine. I find that the keyboard, sometimes a MIDI keyboard, be it a DX7 or really any MIDI keyboard, is much more responsive to touch than the usual drum machine pads. Let's throw in a little example here, shall we? Now, I have some of these memorized as far as where these sounds actually show up on the keyboard. What's good about a sequencer like this, I just want to throw in at this point, is that I can take it out of record and find my next drum without actually loading into the sequence. And then when I'm ready, just go back and record. And there we go. Tell you what we're going to do now as another example of MIDI routing, which I think is important to understand the versatility of some of these instruments and the back and forth that goes on. Let's take these drum pads, which output MIDI from this drum machine. Let's have them play a synthesizer just to show you how that can work. I'll use as a source now, not a destination, as a source, the sequencer. As a destination, we'll use the TX816 racks. And as you can see, I'm actually able to play them from the drum pads. Yes, what I'd like to do at this point is show you a little technique of mine for layering together a motif using the 9000 and using different MIDI channels and different tracks in 9000. Routing-wise, what's happening is we've got our KX88, which I'll be using as a source of MIDI, going to our 9000, a destination, and simultaneously the 9000 will be a source of MIDI, going to our TX816 racks, which I have 4 or 5 of them there set with a similar Rhodes kind of sound. And here, let me show you. We got this guy here, and there's 4 of them there, and there's also a bass sound set up in there. And what I'm going to do is try to just build up a motif by layering, and it's really easier just to go ahead and do it. Let me enhance my drum machine program a little bit. I like to stick a shaker in there at 16th notes, maybe congas. That'll work. And let's give this a shot. What you'll see me do a lot also is with the 9000, I'll be on the fly, which means while it's running, I'll be switching channels, I'll be switching tracks, and I'll be going in and out of record to check out what I want my next part to be, because I'll just be improvising this. So let's see what happens there. There's one part. Let's go to another channel. There's another one. Let's move on. Sure. That's not a bass note. There you go. That'll do for now. And what I do a lot in my writing is I just build up different sections like this. I think where I want them to go. I don't worry about trying to perform them all at once. Sometimes they're impossible. I like to be able to think that with sequencers and these kind of devices, you can write music for three hands and stuff like that. A little trick that I use sometimes when I'm doing a modal thing like this is I'm able to take a sequence like the one I just did, and I'm able to copy it to an empty sequencer, and what I do then is I erase my bass part. Because I can get a lot of mileage sometimes on something that's such a general motify type of a modal type thing, rather. And let's try an alternate bass part. And then what I do is I string them together. Here's our original. And our new guy. Get it? Okay, and usually when I'm doing this, I always reach a point where you've got all this madness going on, all this craziness happening, and you've improvised all these different sections on it. I usually have to have, at some point, some way of organizing it all or taking a look at it. Sometimes just changing a bass note doesn't do it, doesn't cut it. Sometimes changing the bass note's fine, but harmonically you have to look at what else is happening there in the music. And I just want to show you a system I use for checking it out. I call these my Yada sheets because we have a nickname for stuff, a lot of, synthesizer and sequencer music with the bass line going, things like that. My friends are always saying, yeah, it's kind of like just yadas, like yada, 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 yada all the time. So that's the nickname for 16th note stuff. And I like 16th notes a lot. I like stuff that's busy, if it's organized and everything. And here, if you can see, I'm able to take each stave, can represent a different MIDI channel or a track in the sequencer. And I'm able to look at analyze each different 16th note for each bar and see exactly what's going on there. And so when I change a bass note or something, I can see what else is going on harmonically right then in the music. And it really assists me in making sense of all this sometimes. Because at some point you have to make sense of it. Now there are some computer programs I've been checking out that'll do this, especially with something that's quantized to 16th notes. Things that'll do this automatically, but at this point in time, I have found it more to the point to just whip out the old pencil and do it myself than be editing on a program with bugs in it that isn't quite finished yet.